So I have myself a G4 Mac. My idea is to at the very least try and get it up and running. If not, I want to try and mod it. Now, as you can tell, this is the 15-inch model. Apparently, we have a few more of these in the back at my local Free Geek. So I'm going to take this back over with me today and see if I can exchange it out for a widescreen. Reason being, because if I'm going to mod this thing and I can't figure out how to properly repin the display, I won't be able to buy like a 17-inch laptop screen and just do a literal screen swap. And to do that, I need a widescreen. Now, I guess I can buy a 15-inch 4x3, but they're already pre-manufactured. And if I can get a laptop screen, I can buy a custom control board for it and somehow either lengthen or hide the actual control board inside the panel itself. Because what I want to do is I want to try and convert this thing into a semi-competent gaming rig that can actually handle semi-recent titles and whatnot. But to do that, I need to either figure out how to properly pin and power this display, or get a widescreen model that I can just do a literal screen swap. Because I'm going to try and have everything, or as much as I can, inside the base. I don't know if I'm going to do a dedicated GPU or not. I have a few ideas, but I gotta see if I can even get that to fit, especially considering the motherboard, which is going to be an ITX board, is going to take up quite a bit of room. I'm thinking of getting a flex power supply and just buy like two Dell power bricks and have them all external and whatnot, which would make this thing as clean, but it'll provide more than enough power, especially if I can somehow manage to squeeze in a decent GPU into it. So with that said, I might as well kind of show what's going on with this thing and see if I can even diagnose it. So obviously I popped it apart. I took out the hard drive because again, this was that Free Geek and you had to pull the hard drives out of these things. Luckily, the PRAM battery did not explode. I ordered a new one off Amazon. I doubt that's the issue, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly pop the bottom cover off again and just probe some of the points and see if I'm at least getting power from the power supply. Because if the power supply is dead and we have another 15-inch, I can just probably swap the power supplies and get this thing up and running. And of course, if that's the case, I'll be doing that probably all off camera because it's Wednesday and Free Geek's actually open, while Tuesday they're technically not open and they're really only there for like cleaning the place up, getting things done and whatnot. But place is always it's always a mess over there because it's so small. But yeah. So I'm going to pop the bottom case off. I'm going to get a voltmeter and whatnot, and we're going to see at the very least that the power supply is functional. Popping this thing apart is relatively easy once you know what you're doing. So when it comes to how everything works, we got a little board or a little connector right there that connects to this. And then we got a little IDE cable right here that connects to both a hard drive that's non-existent, this thing anymore, and the DVD drive. One thing you definitely note is that there's a little piece of cable missing. Now, I'm not doing anything about that right now because that really shouldn't stop this thing from firing up. It will just stop it from detecting either the hard drive or the DVD drive. What I need to do right now is just plug it into wall power and probe this connector right here and see if I get any voltages and whatnot. And if I get voltages on this, then at the very least, the power supply works, and I gotta figure out why the thing doesn't want to turn on. Alright, so I did some probing, and I don't think it is actually working, the power supply. But it may actually be, and I'm not for certain. Reason being is because, I've mentioned before, I am autistic. And I'm able to hear higher pitched noises than like the average person. And when I'm up close to this thing, and it plugged in, I hear a bunch of rapid clicking noises coming from the power supply. So the power supply is getting power, but I don't know if it's giving that power to the board or whatnot. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it back together again and see if maybe it fires up. I doubt it will. Alright, got it back together enough to test. Let's see if it does anything. And just like I thought, it does nothing. So something on this thing completely died. What died is beyond me. Like I said before, I'm going to see if we got a widescreen model of this thing over at my local Free Geek and see if maybe I can swap it out for this, swap that out. Because again, if I'm going to mod this thing the way I want widescreen because it'll be easier to work with. Alright, I'm back from Free Geek. We had quite a few of these actually. We had a few 20 inches and we had one 17 inch. Now, why didn't I get the 20 inch? Well, it's because if I want to do like a complete screen swap, I already have a 17 inch screen I can use. Now, I bought this for $60 extra. The original one was $40. I used store credit. Now, it was bought working. Unfortunately, when I was in the process of removing the hard drive, mainly the LCD screen, so I can actually pop the bottom cover off, I accidentally twisted off this little cap right here. Luckily, there is no damage to the cap. There is no damage to the motherboard. So, as long as I didn't damage the LCD ribbon cable, I should be able to just resolder this little capacitor back into place, plug in a power adapter, and this thing should theoretically boot right back up. Now, why do I want to do that? Because even though I'm going to be completely tearing this thing apart, well, it's because I still want this thing working. I've always wanted one of these Macs, like I stated before. And I like to have one fully working so I can actually use it for a little while. So I got all this, again, I got the little capacitor, I got the hard drive cable, and I got all the other little screws and whatnot necessary to get this thing more or less put back together. So I'm actually going to take a break and whatnot because I'm hungry, I'm tired, and I really don't want to mess with this thing right now. So I'll come back a little later when I feel more confident enough to pop the bottom cover off again, resolder everything, see if I somehow got this thing working again. Alright, so here is the main board of my G4. And the little capacitor ripped off is the one right there. Luckily, there is no physical board damage, and the actual capacitor itself is completely fine. So all I need to do is just resolder it down, and everything should be fine. The reason why I pulled it off is because over at Apple, they decided to use sticky tape to hold down the connector guard. And I didn't know that at the time, and when I was struggling for like a good 20 minutes, and I couldn't find anything online to show how to pull it out. And I even managed to bend some of the pins. Now I bent them back, and hopefully everything should still be working. But again, I'm going to have myself some food before I start working on this. And this looks kind of like what NVIDIA's been using right now on their newer GPUs. A little interesting to say the least. Alright, I thought before I try and put the little capacitor or resistor or whatever it's called on the actual board, why not see how my ITX case would actually fit, or not ITX case, but ITX motherboard here would actually fit. And it looks like it will fit relatively fine. So now I gotta see if I can somehow cram in a GPU into this thing. From what I can tell, no one's really actually tried doing that, and I'm pretty certain I know why, because it's probably more or less impossible. With that said, I do want to still try. So obviously I'm going to make a little mock-up of that little video card that I'm going to try and get maybe sometime down the road and see if it's even possible. I know for a fact it's possible to put this ITX motherboard in there and fully use it that way. But my idea is to fully convert this thing over to a gaming computer with somewhat competent specs. But for the time being, I want to try and actually fix this board because, again, all that broke off is this little resistor right here. And it does look like I actually did pull a little bit of the little mask off. But I don't see anything underneath that would actually stop the board from firing up. So, hopefully, again, all I need to do is just put the cap back on and the thing will just fire up like nothing happened. But I'll come back when I get all that put together. Soldering skills are definite -10. But if everything works, it don't matter if it looks ugly. All that matters is this cap is in place and it's going nowhere. So I just need to make sure the pins for the LCD screen are more or less fine, and I gotta carefully put everything back in place. I'm gonna ignore the IDE cables because as it stands right now, I just want to see this thing post. As long as I get the chime and the display lights up and shows something, then I know I'm good to go. And then I can just put this thing in the back of the corner until I am more confident enough to where I can start working on this thing. because I do need to get a hard drive for this thing, and I believe the DVD drive either needs to be cleaned or completely replaced. But one thing at a time. I'm going to put this thing back together to a point to where I can test it, and I'll come back. Alright, got it back together enough to test it. And one thing I do want to note is that when I initially tested this thing over at FreeGeek, it did not power on. I thought, okay, it was dead, and I went to talk to the lady at work, the main lady there, to show her that, hey, it doesn't work before I purchase it. And when I went to press the power button, it powered right up, and I was like, I'm going to be paying up the ass for this. Well, technically I only spent $100 for it, or technically I spent $60 on it, but still. So let's just plug it in and see what happens. Well, nothing caught fire. Fan spin. Oh my god, I fixed it. I freaking fixed it. I have a working G4 again. Yay! My complete shit solder skill actually saved this thing. One thing I will note is the display itself is showing some bleed right here and whatnot. It's also somewhat dim. Now, surprisingly enough, this was also the case for another G4. It was a 20-inch. And the way I fixed that, because the brightness wasn't working with the newer keyboards, is I just Command Option PR the thing 2 times, and the brightness went right back up. Now I think one thing you can definitely tell for certain is as I'm recording, the brightness is slowly gaining. So the backlight on this one is definitely old, but it's taking a little while to warm up. With that said, I'm very happy to see that I managed to fix this thing. With that said, now the DVD drive. I don't know if you can hear that, but there's something loose in this, which is something that was stated on the back of the monitor when I went to purchase this thing. Because someone did originally test this thing out. So let me get the old sticky note here and see what's up. So it's a 1 GHz G4, model number, serial number, blah blah blah, running this version of Mac OS. Was tested the 9th of last year. So this thing's been sitting for about a year over at FreeGeek. Let's see. Something race free, something wouldn't boot, something like that. Maybe PRAM needs to be reset. Okay, so maybe the DVD drive actually does function. Oh, it was another G4 that had a busted DVD drive. So theoretically, this DVD drive still fully works. With that also said, I do actually have an IDE hard drive. I'm not going to use it because I think it has my data on it. And I don't want to use a drive that I'm fairly certain has my personal data on it to get this thing up and running. So this is pretty much where I'm going to be stopping the video for now, but I managed to save it. I'm very happy. I managed to save my $60 iMac.